There was one very alarming piece to the offense that did not click, that continued to struggle. Obviously, he had a fourth quarter comeback. He continues to do his thing. Kenny comeback is a real thing. But Kenny Pickett struggled against the Tennessee Titans. There were really never a moment prior to that fourth quarter and that game-winning drive. I mean, there was some here or there. I thought the opening drive was good, but even then there was 2, maybe 3 missed passes. And his one great pass, or his one real crucial catch to Allen Robinson, was like a full yard behind him on that opening drive. Outside of a few passes, I thought Kenny Pickett struggled. Obviously, he had the rib injury. People are going to talk about that if that's a concern, but these concerns have happened all season long. What were your thoughts on Kenny last night? How worried are you about Kenny Pickett? And also at the same time, like, how much are you using the rib injury as an excuse to kind of overlook things?
I think Kenny was not very good for about, call it 80% of this game. I mean, really up until he had the first drive and the last drive, and I felt like the rest of that, it was real iffy. Just missing open receivers, like wide open receivers.
Yes.
And it wasn't missing by a couple inches or something. It was missing by, a couple feet or something. It was like overthrowing George Pickens, which, man, that is hard to do.
Yes.
Just misfires that were completely baffling. I feel like it's a little bit of like the Jesse Eisenberg meme where he's like, he can't keep getting away with this. Like, Kenny can't, like, it's, I mean, he obviously has gotten away with it, but he's, to a certain extent, but he's not very good for the vast majority of games. But as long as it's a close game, you feel extremely confident that if you give him the ball, in a 1-score game with less than 7 or 8 minutes left, you feel like he's going to get you a win out of that. So that's good. But I mean, it's just why does this stuff not work in the first or second or third quarters? And the rib injury, like I believe that maybe had somewhat of an impact on him, but that also but that begs the question again: why did it work so well in the fourth quarter on that last drive, on that first drive, without the kind of same results in the middle third or whatever, middle 3 quarters of that game? Yeah, it didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing with the rib injury, and I get it, I'm not trying to like overlook a injury that he was very clear, hey, this hurts when I throw the football. Okay, well, that's a massive part of your job. Yeah. I get that. But at the same time, like, this isn't the first time that this happened. This wasn't one bad game from Kenny Pickett. This has been 8 games all season long where Kenny Pickett is good in the fourth quarter. I mean, except for like San Francisco and Houston, outside of those 2 games. So 6 out of the 8 games, Kenny Pickett has only been good in the second half of a game or in the final quarter of a game, and he hasn't been good throughout the entire rest of the game. So I can't use it as an excuse. Like, I can't look at the rib injury and say, oh, well, Kenny was hurt. That's why it took him a while, and he saved it all for the end. Like, no, that's just what Kenny does. That's just who he is as a quarterback. I think that there were limitations there in what he was physically able to do, but I also think that he's done all of these things all season long. He has missed deep shots because he has underthrown or overthrown guys. He has overthrown almost every receiver on this roster, or thrown behind them, or thrown at their feet. I mean, that Allen Robinson touchdown prior to I think it was earlier in the game, but that Allen Robinson in the end zone where he like skips it to him, I'm just watching that play and I'm going, that's a touchdown if you can make an NFL throw. Like, that's most quarterbacks are going to make that throw. Allen Robinson should have been in the end zone. That was huge. The opening drive where he threw not 1 but 2 of them over Deontay's head, that was bad. And the Calvin Austin one keeps coming back to me, but that was real bad. That's a touchdown too.
That one I'm willing to be a little bit more forgiving on. He probably could have put more on that, but he also had pressure like right in his face as he was trying to throw that one.
I agree, but I also think that in the NFL, like if he's made one of those throws ever, I'd be like, all right, but he's just never. He always underthrows guys when it's deep. I will say that that pass to Deontay down the sideline, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah,
I did see people. I saw people trying to be like, "Oh, well, that's lucky." If the DB turns his head around at all, like that's a PBU. Like,
no, that was a dime.
He didn't. Well, he didn't. Like, so I don't really know what you want. Like, yeah, it's. I think also didn't that pass to Calvin down the middle that hit Calvin in his hands, didn't it? Like,
no, it got past.
Oh, didn't?
I thought so too, and then they showed the replay and it like comes down into the defender's arms. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Calvin
Yeah.
doesn't even get a hand on it. Because I thought the same thing, and I was like, oh, all right, well, underthrown, but you got to make a play on that one.
Right.
That was on Kenny. But again, he has that moment against Deontay. He has the fourth quarter. Like, my thoughts are this: if the Pittsburgh Steelers could play exactly how they played last night, they'll win games, and they'll win a lot of games, and they'll have opportunities against really good teams. But my thoughts are also like, okay, how long do you go? You can't live, you cannot develop a team and say, all right, well, our quarterback is unavailable to us for the first 3 quarters, but that fourth quarter, man, he's going to turn it on. And as long as we keep it close, he should win a ball game. That's just way too much. That's not a winning formula for any team. I don't know how long you keep it going, but for right now, that's my biggest concern.
Right, and there would be games where you can pull yourself out of an early deficit if you have a quarterback who's ready to go right from the jump. Like, they probably wouldn't be 5-3 right now. They could be 6-2 or 7-1. Like, if they're a little bit more competitive early on in that Texans game, I don't think it gets out of hand later in the way that it did. If you can get something going against the Jaguars early on, I mean, yeah, you only lost by 10 to the Jaguars. If you score 20 points, you're at least in overtime. It's that part of it is frustrating. I think is that the kind of I don't think you're particularly unhappy maybe with where they're at right now, but you just think about kind of the lost potential because you spend 3 quarters or 2 quarters messing around or just playing without an offense for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're set up where your defense has to carry your offense. I mean, Tomlin said it last week. He goes, yeah, we got two turnovers, but they weren't really advantageous turnovers. And you're like, yeah, they weren't advantageous. Yeah, like they weren't touchdowns. They didn't get you into the red zone, but they stopped touchdowns. Both of them were in the red zone. Like it's either points on the board or you get the ball back. That's as advantageous as it gets. But you can't make the most out of that. Like that's just it's too much pressure to put on your defense. And the craziest part is like after watching yesterday, it's like Canada could lead an offense. He could design an offense. We've seen it more than once this season that can go out there and win. And that could carry a defense. He just doesn't have the quarterback that's making throws. And it becomes, very, very concerning about like, I think the biggest thing is just like Kenny sets the ceiling for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Are they a playoff team? Can they beat teams like the Buffalo Bills or the Miami Dolphins or the Kansas City Chiefs? It all depends on if Kenny Pickett shows up for more than a quarter. If he does, cool, you got an opportunity because you have the defense and you have the running game, and now the offensive line looks good. If he doesn't, I think you go into those games and you're thinking there's no way we're about to get smoked. There's just no way that you could hold on to these guys. I don't know. Like, you can't give up on Kenny, right? Like you're not putting Mitch in. You're not even thinking about Mason. Like this is Kenny Pickett's team for the rest of the season. Do you hit a point? Cause I think I've hit a point where this back half is so crucial that I think if nothing does turn around in the offseason, you got to make you have to at least consider a change. I don't know where that change is, but at least you have to consider it.
I don't know if I'm there yet. I think okay. There's still something here. I'm not ready to like completely throw Kenny out just yet. I'll admit right away that he's part of the problem right now, in a way that I don't think people had kind of been given proper credit to for most of the season. But I don't know. Like I just think about what your options may be. Like, what are you gonna draft one? Are you gonna use?
That's my thought. Is like, what are you doing?
Right, a 3rd or 4th round pick on a quarterback, and then I don't know. Like, I don't think the free agent class is going to be particularly enticing. And then even then, like, how much money do you have to spend on a quarterback? Like, I think the question has to be, do you know that you can upgrade? Because I don't know if that's certain. And to be like perfectly fair to Kenny, like there's a lot of reasons that you could kind of explain away some of these struggles, like the inconsistencies of the offensive line, the inconsistencies of the run game. His receivers haven't always been perfect. I mean, he's got a good group, but there's a little bit left to be desired there. I mean, and then also like there was the fact that like Matt Canada wasn't, last night was his best game. Last night was his best game, I think, since he's I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't say, I guess, since he's been in Pittsburgh, but since
No,
I've
but since he's been in Pittsburgh.
right, well, okay, since like at least since Kenny's taken over as starting quarterback, that was his best game. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you got to give it a little bit more time than this, but sure. I guess if you get the kind of same results where Kenny doesn't play for 3 quarters and then somehow brings it alive in the fourth, you can start asking questions about, well, is there a quarterback out there who can play for 4 quarters instead of one? Like, let's you can start having that
There's
conversation.
Yeah, I think what, just like you said, like they're in a spot where it's tough to upgrade. I think that's my biggest qualm here is like you're not gonna draft a quarterback with the 22nd pick or the 23rd pick, whatever you end up with. You're not signing Kirk Cousins, like that's not gonna happen. You're gonna be looking at like Tyler Heineke's and Malik Willis's and saying like, oh, all right, well maybe we can make something out of these guys, but no, you can't. And I think maybe you do go get a better backup just in case because Mitch isn't the guy, and you know I just think at some point you gotta get somebody back there who, if you do put in the ball game, you are confident could win. I think a guy like Tyler Heineke could be an option there, but he's not an upgrade, And just like you said, like you got to rock with what you got because you got salary cap implications and the whole nine. But it is concerning. Like it's concerning that if the rest of it clicks, and Kenny doesn't, where you at? Like, what if Canada has a phenomenal rest of the season? And that's a big if. That's a giant, giant, giant if. But Canada has, if we're going to be honest, Canada has one complete game this season. Kenny Pickett has 0. And scoreboard is concerning because I'd rather it be the other way. You could replace your offensive coordinator. That's the easiest thing to do in the NFL. There are a million quarterback coaches out there who are just waiting for the opportunity for somebody to hire them as an offensive coordinator. It is so hard to find a franchise quarterback. It is the hardest thing to do in the NFL. And that's where things get concerning. But I think Will Levis looked last night like a guy who can make NFL throws, and Kenny didn't. And that's what worries me. Even if it didn't come out with a win, I watched Levis and I just went, that guy's got the arm. That guy's got the ability.
I went into that game thinking like, oh, Will Levis is someone I'm gonna think stinks no matter how well he plays. Like I'm just always gonna have this stink on him. No, he looked great. I was really impressed with him. He was nice.
That's what I'm saying. Like he looks like an NFL capable quarterback, and I think Kenny still has not, like he just hasn't done those things yet consistently enough where it's just like, oh, okay, well, Kenny could be that guy too, outside of a couple throws here. But again, we can't make decisions. No changes will be made anytime soon. So this is just strictly our thoughts on Kenny Pickett and the fact that he is most certainly struggling.